super excited to be talking about from guardrails to culture, how your teams operationalize responsible AI, not just document it. So, we're going to deep dive into a couple of different things, which is operators playbook, templates included, and what you should be thinking if you're rolling out or using AI within 30, 60, 90 days. So, let's dive in more. This is a little bit about me. I am Shweta Agrawal, Chief Product Officer at Boston New Technology. For 15 plus years, have worked in different industries, different sizes of the company, from 500 Fortune to mid to small startup companies, launched multi-million dollars of products. I'm also startup advisor, help founders and entrepreneurs to launch their startups, whether it's go-to-market, product market fit, terms on the product and the tech and the AI side. Love to support different groups, whether they're students, female founders, underrepresented founders, mid professionals. So, super excited today to talk and dive into more how you can use AI in your daily lives. Whether you're a small business, whether you're a small company, a startup, or you're a large enterprise, I know like for past 3 years, I mean, AI and ML has been here for like more, than a decade. It has become a part of our lives for past 2 to 3 years. And as you are thinking, how can I implement AI in my daily life? This is something you have to think about, right? Whether you are building AI in your company, meaning it's an AI powered product, or whether it's AI you're just using in some workflows. What does that even mean, right? So the real problems are, nowadays companies have, everyone is using AI, right? And there are like some documents around like how you should be thinking about responsible AI policies. And as we all know, like when we're building a product, when we're launching a product, it goes through a couple of different streams. It goes through the engineers to build the product, then it goes to the testing, it goes to marketing and sales. There are so many players involved in it. But guess what? When the AI has been built, not all, sometimes engineers or the tech team don't get chance, or they never read the documents, right? So three things here: the policy shelves, responsible AI, so we're going to call it RAI. Documents live in the Confluence. If you're using Confluence, if you're using SharePoint, if you're using Google Doc, I don't think anyone uses SharePoint at this moment, but Google Documents, it is sitting in your repository, right? If you're creating and using Jira or Trello, it's just tickets are just sitting there. No one is really using it. You want to launch faster, right? You are in the market. And sometimes we all focus on how fast we can launch the product. We don't think about like, are we launching the product thinking about AI in mind? So that is really something you have to think about. The measurement gap, very important to be fair and unbiased. When you're building the products which are involves AI, it's an AI powered product or AI powered feature. We really have to think about how we can make it more responsible, how we can make it more fair. And there are metrics, there are acceptance criteria, but we have to really deep dive into how we can measure that gap. The third is the ownership vacuum. When safety is everyone's responsibility, it becomes no one's priority. So I have seen this as well. Every department, right? So how you can think of like responsible AI, it's not one people's job, or it's not one department responsible for it. It's a group effort, right? It's part of every department have to play a role and should play a role in the responsible AI when it comes to it, right? And that's why when everyone thinks like, oh, this department is going to do it, like that department, no one pays attention to it, and it does not get involved in the workflow, right? So you don't have to focus on the issues when it happens, but it should be part of your product launching process. So the responsible AI delivery pipeline, think of it exactly like your software CI/CD pipeline, except the test from harm. So as we launch the products, right, we think about different tiers. There are different product life cycles, right? So the first one is principles, and there is a requirement, and there is risk tier, right? So risk tier is nothing but where you're testing your product, whether if there is any risk, which involves like when you have an AI, what are the risks when it happens when you launch a product, like what you can expect, right? There are different risk tiers which we will touch base later on. Then evaluation metrics, like as we launch the products, we always think about different metrics, like how many users are using it, what the response is. So tons of metrics, but also thinking about how we can also add some metrics which tests the AI part of it, right? Review gate is nothing but a human sign off. So if you're using AI agents, whatever that means for you in your company, in your organizations, in your role, you need to have human in the loop at the moment, right? As we are training AI, as we are working with the models, you really have to think about how you can really include the humans so they can test and verify, right? Because they have been working, someone who is an SME, an expert in their role, in their job, like, can they verify what AI is generating, right? So before it goes out in the production or even it goes for the launch. And the release gate, can we test out once we get the green signal, like, oh, everything looks good, can we test it out again, right? Monitoring, once you launch it, you have to keep on monitoring. I know, like, we all do that once the product is launched, but given AI is involved, what are some additional metrics that you're paying close attention to and how you're going to tackle those? So incident reporting is like, let's say something happens, how are you, if there's a bias or there's an unfair decision that was made, like how you will handle that, right? So you need to be ready and you have to think through things, right? Audit documents, this is, as whenever we try to put something in production or something new you are planning to implement in your workflow in a CI/CD pipelines, right? There is always a great practice, a thing like everyone does, which is like audit documents. Like, it's great to include in your pipeline, which will help you down the line. And the culture group, so as we are talking about different, including different players and stakeholders in the process, it start with the mind shift, right? It start with the culture, it start with everyone's job, like how you can think differently than what we have been doing traditionally, but how we can really shift and say, like, okay, AI is here. If you're using in a workflow, how we can think through and make it part of our everyday life. First is risk tiering, which is the size the work first. This is an example you can think of. So you don't need a systemic engineer to hang a picture frame. So for example, systemic engineer is nothing but like who can say, like, if there's an earthquake or or if you're building a building, that's when you need those engineers. But you will absolutely need, like, let's say a hospital, right? So you really need to identify who are the key players and where they are needed, right? You can't put someone's role into something else which they can't do. So what I mean by that is there are three tiers of risks. And the first one is the low risk, right? So the internal chatbot, and some of the examples are internal chatbot, search autocomplete, email draft helper, right? The review process is like, self-review and then basic prompt test, like, oh, is it generating the output that I wanted, right? And then ship with logging. So you release it and monitor. So these are a couple of things that you can test out before you even launch your product, right? The mid-tier risk is customer recommendation, HR screening, content moderation, right? Which is, you want to be a little careful, I mean, more careful when it comes to the customers, when it comes to the HR content, right? It can involve not just like in one person, but a group of people, which is called a peer review, right? Bias, like, is it like a bias? When you go for hiring, you want to make sure it's like fair, which will review the bias. And there's a red team, like, who will test out the scenario no one ever thought of. And then the release gate managers approval is required and bias score weekly. And the third tier is the high risk bucket, which is, this falls under high sensitive industries. So for example, it can be in fintech, in health tech, in legal tech, in journalism, right? So those areas fall under the high risks, and you have to be more careful and more rigid about how you launch it. So for example, loan decisions, there's a medical triage, legal guidance, and hiring AI, right? The review process, like, you need a full board, full team from responsible AI who is going to deep dive more. External audit team, you like legal sign off to make sure everything happening is correct, right? Then you have executive and stage rollout and real time and human audit. So you want to be including human in the process. Next step is from vague principle to testable requirements. Even though if you have documents about AI, responsible AI, let's say you have started reading those documents, but you have from the vague principles, you have to be really testable, right? You want to test it out. In that case, you want to think about, like, what most teams ship this translation layer and why the principle never make into sprints. And what I mean by that is, let's say there are, as I mentioned before, responsible AI includes a couple of different things. So you have to be fair, you have to be transparent, and you have to make sure how you can minimize the risk, like how you can minimize the harm. And there come certain concrete requirements. So for example, our approval rates must not differ more than 5% across demographic groups, right? And it can be how you can see the demographic, and there are certain metrics you have to think about, and there should be some automated tests. So for example, auto bias evaluation before every deploy. So think about the responsible AI or testing the requirements is not not a one-time thing. It's not like, oh, we have launched a feature, we don't have to test it anymore. Even though every time you're launching, making a change, you have to test out thoroughly, right? Be transparent. Every AI recommendation must display top three contributing factors, right? Number of output that includes explanations. So you should know where and how you're using AI. It's just not because you don't want it to hallucinate. So you want to cross check, right? If something has been provided, if there's an output, does it even make sense, right? And there should be, like, I know currently we have been using Agile and all those different processes, CI/CD pipelines, but there has to, and we have like, QA checklist. If you have a QA team who's doing it for the before the pre-launch, there are a couple of checklists, right? You go through like multiple checks and testing before you launch it, and think about like how you can also integrate this AI part into your testing process, which can have like multiple testing procedures. It can be included in the audit release part. Minimize harm, like zero tolerance for hallucination, clinical facts, and medical output. As I mentioned, the couple of different sensitive industries need to see if there is any data which is hallucinating, right? Factual accuracy via RAG, grounding check, and then the red team plays a big role because you want to test out the facts, right? Moving on to the model and prompt testing checklist. So these are a couple of the things that you can think of as you are testing, as you are working for your product launches or your feature launches. So you wouldn't ship code without unit tests. Think about as you are working in the company, if you're an engineer, if you're a product person, if you're in marketing and sales, if you're in UI UX, or a tester, right? We all know that we build the product and we have to do some unit testing, and there are like different kinds of tests we perform to make sure what we expected is that's something that we're getting back, right? So that is the norm. That's something that we're doing every time we launch something. And this, with this wave of AI, the work and the way we launch products have shifted or moved. So for example, your prompts are code. Right now, engineers are using prompts, I mean LLMs and different tools to identify, or even to generate codes, right? To include coding in the process, right? So how you prompt, that's how you get your code. That's how you get your products, prototypes, or the features that you're working on. And they will have bugs, right? Because based on what you're prompting, that's how it's going to give you the output. And it does not know everything. The tools will not know everything that what you're thinking, right? So it might throw you the output which is hallucinating, which is not correct. And then that's your responsibility. That's like whether you're an engineer, whether you're a team working on using AI, several different things. So for example, adversarial inputs like test jailbreaks, prompt injections, and the weird edge inputs your most creative users will try. You have to be your own red team, right? You have to see, okay, what can go wrong. Second is demographic parity. Swap names and pronouns and locations, like test out and see what can go wrong, right? Like as we all do, like, different A/B testing, right? So just play around with it and see what output you get. What is the quality of the output, the tone and the length shift, right? All these metrics really help you to understand what you're inputting into the AI, what you're getting out of it, like what you have to change and shift. Hallucination, as we all know, we have to train, right? It will take time, and that's why it's really important for you to have a human to verify that. Ask the model about fictional events, and if, let's say, if you're putting something into the AI, if it does not have any history, any information, any knowledge, it will just throw you something random, like anything it will generate. And it's very interesting to see what it, if you are just taking that in and putting in your production, it's a risky thing, right? So just cross check what it's generating, right? Refusal calibration. Does it refuse harmful requests? Does it wrongly refuse safe ones? Both failure modes matter, right? If you're asking your product, whether it's a feature, if you're asking things and how it's responding to you, is it, if there's a harmful request, if there's like a biased request, like how it is tackling, how it is responding to those requests, so that plays a bigger role. Context leakage. Can users extract your system's prompt or other users' data via clear input? So, as we all know, whether someone is like starting their own businesses, like a startups, or they're working in the enterprise. If let's say you are in healthcare, you have a healthcare company, and you have, let's say, 100 customers, right? If you're trying to get more customers using, or physicians or hospitals using your product, the bigger, uh, I wouldn't say barrier is like the trust, but also making the safety and the data and everything, right? Because if you are connecting and using healthcare, you will be bringing the healthcare PHR information into your product, right? And it is very important for you, like, to see let's say if you're using AI, but how are you going to really make sure it's not getting leaked by some external factors, right? So those areas are really important. Same thing in financials. People have information about the banks and assets and all those information. How do you really protect that information? Instruction stability. Paraphrase the same safety constraint 10 ways and see how the model responds. Is it 100% compliant, right? Because as you're going through the audits and the checks, you really want to make sure it's stable, it's compliant. Output variance, same prompt, 10 runs. The variance acceptable. So this is very interesting because if you just for fun, if you try using any LLMs or the tools you're using, if you put a prompt in, for example, and you run it like 10 different times, 5 different times, you will see, or let's say you just put an Excel file into your LLMs. If you run it again and again, it will keep on show you different outputs. So it's not the same. So it's very interesting to see if you keep on running 10 different times, it will keep on throwing you different information. So you have to really verify what is correct. Regression suit, like every past incident becomes a permanent test case. So as you're launching your product, let's say you have gotten some incident reports, you have seen some errors. Next time when you launch your product, use those as your baselines. You have to cross all those things again, test it again, what went wrong. That will help you to shape your product in the future. So it plays a very big role. The fourth one is a red team exercise that actually finds things. So red team is nothing but you can think about like how I can break this product, like how I can test out in different ways no one have ever thought about, right? So red team is not a yearly audit, it's a recurring design ritual like sprint retros, but for the failure modes, right? Because at this I want to see what will fail, and it's not like one time thing. Again, it's not a yearly thing. It has to go every now and then whenever you're thinking of launching your product. It can be like a, if you're using, weekly sprint, if you're using bi-weekly sprint, it is applicable for every time you are launching or updating your features. So there are three different things you can think about, like the persona red team. So when pre-launch, when you're working on the new feature, you're fixing your new feature or launching your new product, you have to assign some roles to the team members, and these team members can be anyone, right? It's not just defined by one role. So it can be a curious teenager, it can be a back actor, the confused elderly user, non-native English speaker, the competitor. Each pro will help you to lead. Like you have, because your product, let's say, once it's out there, anyone can use it, anyone will use it, right? So you want to really see how, if different user bases are using it, what can break your product, right? So you want to test out everyone, include everyone. And the output is the failure mode catalog prompt blocklist. It will give you like what failed and how you have to work on it, right? The second bucket is edge case sprint. So it's every 2 weeks for tier two plus, right? The thing we spoke about, tier two as in like what is the mid-level risk. So how you can have like 30-minute structured session, like each engineer submits three prompts designed to break the system, and then the team votes on most likely cause real harm. What happen is, and then top five become the regression test. What will happen is everyone is thinking in different way, right? And then you can think of like once you have all the outputs with you, you can really define, oh, this is going to break my product, this is or my feature. So you have to include that in your regression tests or suit or the model and fine tune it. The third bucket is bias audit. So this you can think of quarterly, every model upgrade, because you're really thinking like how it will bias, right? So you can think about running identical scenarios which with one demographic, and then changing the name and gender and location and the age. That will give you how that changes affects the outcome, and this will help you to measure the quality differences, right? And document everything, because all this testing and trials you're doing, it's helping you to see what is the baseline, what your product is throwing out, and how you have to define your output. And again, this will help you to have parity report, prioritize remediation backlog. You always need to have some risk. How you're going to mitigate the risk, right? So this will create a baseline for you. The fifth is incident response runbook for AI harms. So what it means is like, let's take a real scenario. You are hiring AI tool was your tool was surfacing 40% fewer women for senior roles. So you have an AI tool and that is showing like, oh, it is like biased. Who owns the call? Who gets rolled back? Like who gets notified? In this case, now there is a problem, but how do you fix that? Who do you notify? Who do you involve in decision making? How do you make sure it's rolled back if it is, if your product is already out there, launched it, and then you're seeing those disparities, right? So this is like a high level view. If it's like one and within an hour, detect and classify. You have identified the user reports arrive, the RA officer, if you have, you need to form a team if you don't have already responsible AI team. And there are like a couple of severities, right? The priorities you can like have P1, P2, P3. So I've listed you a few, which is like the safety and the legal, fairness and the quality, and classify what's the next step are. If it is within like within 4 hours, you can think of like kill switch and be feature. If it's causing a lot of problem, you might have to just like kill the feature, flag off immediately. Then second thing you can think of like add rate limiting, enhance logging. A document who made the rollback decisions and when preserve evidence chain. If you see that is affecting a log, then I'm sure like you might have heard of like when the feature is launched or the products are launched, and if it's affecting, you have to roll back. And that decision is has to be made by the team that is involved in launching the features, not just like someone makes the decisions and they do it. They have to include everyone in the approval process to make sure, like, hey, we have to roll back this feature. Let's do that. So you have to document when and how and who made those decisions. If it's within a day, you have to pull prompts log, model versions, evaluation histories, quantify the radius, like how many users were impacted, what output was generated, which output got most attentions, what decisions were made downstreams. Assign the root cause owner. So that way you will know end to end what is happening and what is not happening. Uh, Within 2 days, you can think of fixing the root cause, notify affected users per the policies, and then file internal postmortem reports where you bring all the teams together and you think like brainstorm and see what went wrong, what we can do better next time. Add failure mode to the red team library and the regression suite. As I said before, all these are learning lessons for you. If you are getting any output which you have not thought, your team has not came across, you have to document and make sure in the future it does not happen again. Within a week, learn and harden, like publish internal incident learnings, upgrade and update your RAI, responsible AI checklist, measure if it reoccurs within 30 or 90 days, right? Involve your leadership team and make them aware of it. Consider any external disclosure for high severity, like if it's in a sensitive industries. Going into the audit documents, as we spoke about, like how you have to include your audit teams, and you have to audit the documents. If there is an responsible AI documentation is there already. If it's separate from the engineer's work, it won't get done, right? Because engineers are very deep dive working on building the product and feature. The responsible AI documentation should be part of it, not separate, right? So there's a couple of painful points, and there are a couple of different. So few things to list out. Don't have a separate 40-page array. Just embed into your daily, the coding part of it. Manual evidence gathering for quarterly compliance review. There is audit prep scramble. Couple of things which are manually, which think about how you can ignore versus the automated embedded part. I'm not going to read all this through, but just thinking of like how you can have those templates included required in GitHub and Jira, and how you can have some riskier auto assigned user case classifications. Culture making, so it's everyone's responsibility to, when you're launching the product, when you're launching the features, to really make sure it's not biased, it's free from the risks, and how it starts, right? So rules without culture are speed bumps. Culture without rules is wishful thinking. You need balance of both, right? Ownership model. So every AI feature has name. You have to name and make someone the responsible, right? Not when you have a committee is great. You need to have a committee for sure. You need to have a board review for sure. But if it is one AI feature or a product, you need to have that responsible AI owner. they will hold everyone accountable, right? The second is decision rights. Engineers own test coverage, the product manager owns risk tier assignment, leadership owns tier 3 sign-offs. The final sign-off is required. There should be no ambiguity. Incentives that work: safety bugs count in sprint velocity, red team participation appears in the peer performance review, so that will give the team more chance to showcase, like, hey, look, I have found out like 10 different things, 10 different bugs that would have impacted. I came across this and I solved it. So give some incentives. Training, as we are all learning about AI, not everyone in the team might know. So provide 30 minutes of mandatory responsible AI onboarding for every new hire so that they are made aware of. That is how you can think of in daily life, in your work. And monthly failure review sessions, like an incident retro, but an external AI human stories. Learn from each other, share the stories. Leadership narrative, leaders celebrate responsible AI wins in all hands, right? We caught this before the launch. So how you can really showcase, like, hey, before we were launching, we identified this risk, we solved this bias, and we included the safety. Show that, like, have that in your, whether it's a town hall, whether it's a monthly meeting, quarterly meeting. Give a shout out to the team, right? And how you're standing out with the competitors. That's really important. And the last one is tool defaults. Make the safe path the easy path. So pre-filled with the PR templates, auto-triggered evaluation pipelines, safety linters and CI/CD. How you can really see how the tools work and how it can help you. So this is the next part, which is as you're thinking about using AI, responsible AI, into your product launches, feature launches, as you're testing out things. This is something you can think about for 30, 60, 90-day rollout plan. Day one, the first month foundation, right? I'm not going to deep dive into everyone, but just wanted to share with you all. Audit every AI feature in production, the risk level and the owner, the risk tier, as we spoke about, like there are different tiers. Identify one responsible AI owner, create a launch Slack, or you know just a quick check-in. Translate three principles in testing, right? In the day, within 60 days, you have to build an evaluation harness for tier 2 and tier 3. Run first 2 hours internal red team just to see what they have find out. If there are any incident responses, create a run book, right? Set up an audit dashboard where everyone can see what's happening, what they identified. Have, as I spoke about, mandatory 30-minute onboarding sessions with all the engineers who are shipping the AI products and the features, and a monthly failure review to really make everyone aware what happened and how you tackle the things. And within 90 days, it's all about culture, right? So think about 30 day is foundation. You're laying the foundation. Within 2 months, you're executing it, operationalizing in every day. And within 3 months or 90 days, you are really shaping the culture, right? So add responsible AI metrics to your OKRs if there are. Launch the champions, the RAI champions, rotating. When you recognize them, give incentives, people are tend to do more, right? So, and this is not an easy task. So give recognition, reward them. First quarterly bias audit on the highest risk product, leadership all hands. Celebrate the responsible AI wins that was caught before the launch, and publish internal documents if there are, so people can read it, employees can read it, right? And plan first external audit if there is any tier 3 use cases exit. Last thing, I would, before we wrap up, like, these are 5 things to do on Monday mornings. These are few things that you can think of. List every AI feature currently in production, assign it a risk tier, and name a human owner by the end of the day. So a couple of things that you can think of to actually execute. As we spoke about, it's not just a vague. Now we know we are here, how we can implement in everyday process, right? Adding 5 fields or responsible AI section to your next PR template and make it required. Book a 2 hour red team session this sprint. Invite people outside your engineering and ask them to find, something that you have missed. Translate one principle into a testable requirement, not just being fair, what it looks like. Name your responsible AI incident response lead, and they will help you to switch without asking permission. So, to wrap it up, responsible AI is not a feature you ship once. It is an operating systems you run every sprint. It is an ongoing process. You don't just stop at one time thing, but you have to keep on doing. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions.